administering Azure resources. How do we manage Azure resources? What are some of the tools that are there for us, when it comes to management of these resources, creating these resources, modifying these resources, deleting these resources? What are some of the tools, that we use in achieving all these? So we'll talk about, so there is actually a lab for you guys. I think the 3A, how to manage, Azure resources via the portal, which I'm sure you guys, at least you've done that during the fundamental class, but we can still take a look at some of those things, or take you guys through some of the things you need to know, maybe a brief demonstration. Then we look at, one of the tools is actually the Azure Portal. Aside that, we have some other tools like the ARM template, which I'm sure we discussed during the fundamental class. At least we'll still talk about it today. Then we have the Cloud Shell. We have the CLI. Under the CLI, we have the Bash and the PowerShell. A lot of people get confused, and this is the question they ask. What's the difference between the Cloud Shell and the CLI, which at least we'll talk about today. So let's start with configuring Azure resources with tools. So here, there are 4 different tools which I've talked about. I talked about the template, which is the ARM template, where we'll be using code to manage our resources. Then the portal, which is the GUI, graphical user interface. Then the Cloud Shell, which is the browser-based command interface. Then we have the CLI, which is the command line interface, and this is downloadable. We have the Linux version, which is the Bash. We have the Windows version, which is the PowerShell. So here, we'll be looking at how do we manage resources using maybe the portal, and how do we manage resources using PowerShell. I feel we should maybe take a look at the demonstration, and okay, so let's start with that. Like I said, today we do not really have a lot to do, so I'm just going to start with the demonstration. So the demonstration is how do we manage our resources, using the PowerShell. So you all know that to access the portal, all you need to is to access the URL portal.azure.com. I'm sure you guys have been able to create your Azure environment. If you have not, please try to do that. And if you are facing any issue or you are not able to create it, please do let me know. I dropped the link yesterday to the YouTube videos that talks about this specifically. But if you have any issue at any point in time, please do let me know. So there are some things I would like you to, at least understand when it comes to managing your resources using the portal. Yesterday we talked about the identity object, which if you want to manage any of the identity object, you need to go to the Microsoft Entra ID, and you can see different blades which corresponds with different objects, identity objects in there. This shows the overview. This is not part of the resources, but I feel let's at least try to see some of the things you need to know when it comes to the portal. So, because there are some things I might not be able to mention in the class based on this documentation I'm using to teach. So here shows the overview of what's going on in the portal. You can see the name of the organization You can see the tenant ID, the primary domain, which I actually swap the primary domain. If you go ahead to create your Azure account, your portal, your organization, your tenant, whatever you call it, you will not get this as a primary domain. This is actually a custom domain. So if I come here to the custom domain, where's the custom domain? Yeah. When you create your Azure environment, you get what we call a .on Microsoft domain. So let's say you create with oriofe.com. So your custom domain, or sorry, your primary domain is going to be oriofe.onmicrosoft.com. And that is what, so depending on the user that you used in creating the tenant, because I created this tenant with Babafemi at IT360ng, Azure will automatically create an on Microsoft account for me. However, you can create another tenant within this tenant. And with that, you are able to now select, or yes, let's put it that way. You are able to select your on Microsoft. But the first time you are creating a Microsoft tenant, you will not be able to do that. So if I go back to the overview, and I try to create a new tenant from here, you can see, you can go to manage tenants. Yeah, just hold on. So I can try to create a new tenant from here. And this is going to ask me, because we have two different tenants, we have the Azure B2C that we talked about, that technology behind you signing in with your preferred, identity. That's not what we are focusing on today. We are focusing on the Enter ID. Then if I try to create an Enter ID tenant, here you can see I can put in the name of the tenant. Then I can actually select my initial domain. And my initial domain is going to be .on Microsoft domain. So here I can just give it a name. Say, let's say, this should be global. If I do something like this, I'm sure people will have taken it. Yes, someone else will be using it at this time. So you need to select a name that is actually different from others. So I can have something like DevOps NG. Okay, that's selected. Yeah, I think I'm the one that's using that. But let's put another G at the back. Now you can see that has taken it. So this is going to be DevOps ngg.onmicrosoft. You can see it.com. Now the location is something you need to select. Now, depending on where your organization resides, you need to select that location. One thing is you cannot change the location of your tenant. So if you want to do that, maybe you might need, to now delete and recreate it. But from what I know, you cannot change the location of your tenant. Maybe from tomorrow morning, they might change that. But for what I know, then this will be the organization name that will be showing something like this. You can see. So here you can select the organization name. And once you are done with that, you can go ahead, to create your tenant. I'm not going to create any tenant. The same way, if you want to go ahead to delete your tenant, you can see I have different tenants. They all have, whatever what they're doing there. So I can go ahead to delete a tenant. But before you delete a tenant, there are some prerequisites that needs to, okay, let's even see. Let's say I want to delete this tenant. It takes me to, the tenants. In case, you guys created your tenant and there is a need for you to delete it. So I'm just trying to show you, what you need to do. Those tenants will not just go away. Before you can delete a tenant, you must make sure that you have deleted, some, maybe the objects, the enter ID object that you've created, like the users, the groups. Only the user that will be deleting the tenant will be left in the tenant at the time that you want to delete it. So any subscription that you've taken, any licenses that you have taken, you need to, okay, this guy want me to complete this. I don't want to do that now, but oh, oh, okay, just give me some minutes. Let me just go back to that tenant. So at that time, only the user that needs to delete the tenant will be left in the tenant at the time that you want to delete the tenant. So all the subscriptions, all the user account that you've created, all the licenses, all those objects needs to be deleted before you can go ahead to delete a particular tenant. So the overview also shows you the number of users, the number of groups, the applications and the likes. So to create your group, we talked about this, where I even explained that when you delete a group, it will be deleted for 30 days. Just the same way when you delete a user, it will be deleted for 30 days. It will be in the deleted state for 30 days. However, if you delete, a group, which is a security group, that will be permanently deleted. We have different types of groups when it comes to, the way you assign users to groups. So we have the dynamic, and we have the assigned. So let's say I want to create a group now. You would see that I'm not sure I have, the membership type, you have the assigned and the dynamic. This is grayed out because I do not have premium P1 license. Without a premium P1 license, I think we talked about this when I was explaining the different types of the plans that we have. So if you don't have a premium P1 license, you will not be able to create a dynamic group. And we have different group type. We have the security group and the Office 365 groups. So if you create this group and you go ahead to delete it, for the Office 365 group, when you delete it, it will stay in deleted state for 30 days. However, when you delete a security group, it will be deleted, at that particular time, as in at that very moment. So do not at any point in time delete a security group. When you create an Office 365 group, which is a Microsoft 365, an email address will be assigned, to that group, which is what you can see here. And, this is just going to be like a shared email. What again, there are different, so you can see membership type, dynamic, assign. So the same way you can create a dynamic group for users, you can create a dynamic group for devices also. But the only thing you need to know is you cannot have devices and users in the same group. So that's something. So you can see the license that I have. So I have Microsoft Entra ID free license, application, under application, so external identity, let's not move away from that. For external identity, this is where we talk about Azure B2B, inviting guest users to your tenant. This is where we do the configuration from. So roles and administration is just talking about the tenant roles I was talking about yesterday, which you need to have signed to your users, in order to be able to manage identity or enter ID objects. like the application, authentication, whatever you need your user to be able to, manage. And we have the global admin, which, just like the owner on the subscription, can manage everything related to, Enter ID. There was something I said I was going to show you guys yesterday, that a user that has been assigned a global administrator role can actually elevate his or her access. So to do that, you can do that from, the properties, and you can see you need to check this button to yes. By default is always on no. When you check this button, this says this can manage access to all subscription and management group within the tenant. Once you check this is what will say you have, elevated your access. So that's that part. I think I missed it from yesterday. So here is where we create administrative unit, then we have some other blades also, like the devices, enterprise applications, app registrations, identity governance, which, licensing and the likes, which we'll still talk about. Like I said, there is another course, which is the identity and access management, if you really want to go into, into that. However, when you read this particular course, when you read the documentation on the learn.microsoft, you should have at least an idea of all these things. So the cost tenant synchronization, this, which is also, related to the B2B. I think there is still, I don't know, some modules where we'll still talk about majority of this thing, but at least you guys should just have an idea of, what's going on in here. We can have, this is where we do the password reset. We have the complete branding, which is if you want to sign into the portal, at least you want to customize what your user sees before they are logged into the portal. When they try to access your portal, your organization portal, let me show you what's happening with company branding. So for company branding, now if I go to portal.azure.com, because this is for everyone, now it's going to come out the same way, like this blue screen and the likes. But once I put in the domain, my organization domain, since we've actually configured company branding, what will come out will be, maybe what we've customized in our company branding blade, So if I type in, without even typing in my password, once I type in my username, and I enter, now I select, now you can see that this has changed. Now I have a logo, then, I have like a backend logo also, something like this. So this is what we call company branding. I've branded, our interface. Then this is security part, where you can actually, on this security, you can look at some of the things, to better secure your tenants, where we'll talk about the conditional access that we've talked about, the identity protection, name location, which works with the conditional access, multi-factor authentication, and some other things like risky users, risky sign-ins that we've talked about, But these are things we'll talk about under, security, cyber security, and the likes. Yeah, so that's that about the Enter ID. Now let's look at, what we have for today, which is managing, resources. To manage resource, we need, the subscription, and under subscription, we always, at least we have different resource groups where these resources are actually added to. Now, under the resource groups, you can see different resource groups that I have here. Under each of these resource groups, you can see different resources, under each of these resource. And before you can actually manage any resource, you need to be assigned a role, maybe on the subscription where the resource is deployed, or on the resource itself, which we explained yesterday, that at least you need an outback role to be able to do this. So whatever resource you are managing, so you can see all the blades that are actually attributed to that particular resource. This is just like a virtual machine. You can start that virtual machine, you can restart, you can stop the virtual machine, you can even delete. You can see what are the properties of the virtual machine, the disk size, the size, whatever you're looking at here. You can, if you have issues with this virtual machine, you can also raise a ticket, by going to this support and troubleshooting and raise a ticket to to Microsoft. So this is how we actually manage resources via the portal. And to create a resource, you can click on this create a resource, and you would see all the resources based on categories. You can also search for whatever resource you want to create without clicking on the create a resource by, if I want to create a virtual machine, I can search for the virtual machine here, and you can see, yeah, I can just click on this and that takes me to the virtual machine and create whatever I need to create instead of searching for, that particular resource. So that's that about demonstration using the portal. Now let's look at, demonstration using, the Cloud Shell. Yeah, so like I said, really. So like I said, oh, so sorry. I'm trying to, okay. Like I said, the Cloud Shell is a browser-based command line interface, and this is actually incorporated into the Azure portal. For you to be able to access the Cloud Shell, this icon is the Cloud Shell. This is for notification. Anything you are doing in the portal, you get a notification here. This is for settings. If you want to switch the portal, or you want to switch, you want to switch tenants. If you have multiple tenants and you want to switch between those tenants, this is settings. You can also switch from here, by clicking on switch directory. But what we want to talk about now is the Cloud Shell, which is the icon here. If I click on this, this is going to start, what we call a Cloud Shell for me. And this Cloud Shell, also includes the two type of CLI that we have, the Linux-based CLI, which is the Bash, and the PowerShell, which is the Windows-based CLI. And when we say CLI, command line interface. And so if I want to manage my resources, so we can actually do that from here. So now you can see currently I'm logged into the Cloud Shell, and the CLI option that has been selected is the PowerShells. That means I can start running, PowerShell scripts in here. So a very good example is, a get subscription. You can see get subscription PowerShell. The good thing about when you use the Cloud Shell is that, what's going on? The good thing about this is you do not need to sign in again, because if you are doing this from your on-premises or from your system PowerShell, you need to connect, your username or your user account and your tenant, before you can start using it. So don't worry, it might look jargon, but at least for now, just know that when we want to manage, our resource using command line interface, that is when we use, all the Cloud Shell or the Bash or the PowerShell. So if I run this is going to list the subscription that I currently have in this tenant. You do not need to cram all these. If you go to, you can go here and search for, PowerShell, Azure, and this will, take you to the documentation, and whatever you need to, whatever you want to create, whatever you want to do, see, like manage resources, you can see, if you want to manage subscriptions, you can see what you need, when you want to manage. So there are different comlets. Okay, let me just look for this one that I just ran, which is the get is the subscription. So you do not need to cram anything, just because okay, so you can see here we have different ones. If you want to manage the tenant, this is what I just ran. It's not as if you need to cram anything. So if you want to get your tenant, you can do get tenants, just run that. Yeah. So this is going to list all the tenants that I have, this my user account is added to. Then if you want to do whatever you want to do, maybe get token, get the environment, whatever you want to do, you can see everything here depending on the resource you are managing. So you do not have to cram anything. Everything is here. If you want to create a storage account, you can actually do that from here. If you want to create a virtual machine, you can actually do that from here. You do not need, you can see if I want to create a virtual machine, or let's say I want to get all the virtual machine that I've created in this tenant. So when you're using PowerShell, we have what we call the verb and the noun. The verb, you can see all these things, all these ones in front, they are verb. So we have get, set, add, invoke, new, remove, all those ones, update, they are verb. Then now comes, the now itself. Then, but this is not a PowerShell class. Maybe we can have, a PowerShell class at a later stage, but this is just telling you that, the same way we manage resources using the portal, we can just run some lines of code. This will even tell you how you can actually run this line of code. Let's say we want to, get a, maybe a virtual machine that we've created. And to get a virtual machine, you need to select, the resource name the resource group where you've created the virtual machine and the name of the virtual machine. Then this will list all this for you. So let's take a look at this. Let's say we want to run the get VM. You can see this is even telling me, guy, this is what you need to do. So let me go to this lab and search for the resource group name. So this lab is within the CI/CD. So I'm going to come back here, and so here you will see I will get the same info. So what's the name of the machine? That's the labs. So these are filters. All these things you can see, we call it filters, in PowerShell. But do not worry then. I select, CICD, which is the resource group name. Then if I run this is going to give me the information about that virtual machine. So you can see just the same way, we manage our resources using the portal. We can do the same using, our CLI, our Bash. So we've done this. This is the PowerShell. You can switch this if you are a Linux person. If you use Linux and not Windows, you can see the interface is different, you know. And I can run something like, because this is different. You can see I was using something like verb, and now the other time I will have something like easy, account. This also, you can search for bash bash code, for um bash code for Azure also, and you will get it. So these are just different tools that we can actually use, to manage, our portal, or sorry, our resources in Azure. So this is just telling you, some of the things, that we can do. So let's now take a look at these tools. At least I've explained these tools. Like I said, the portal is a GUI tool, which is the graphics user interface. You can actually view and manage your resources. It's visual. It also have a mobile app, which I have on my phone. So you can also download that, but it doesn't have a desktop app. It only have a mobile app. Then we move ahead to the Cloud Shell, which is browser based. It offers you, the Bash and PowerShell, and it works the same way as the Azure PowerShell and CLI, which you might need to download, on your system. So if you check your system, if you are using Windows, you will see that you have PowerShell on your Windows machine. And if you are using, Linux, you will see that you have Bash on, your Linux machine. So the same way this works interactively, they are just command line, interface where you can run a script to create or manage your resource. Search for and locate, resources, support and help ticket, which I've showed you guys. And your dashboard, yes, you can customize your dashboard. I think I can show you that, how to customize your dashboard. Let's see. This is just talking about what you can see here. You can customize these. You can come here and add more favorite to your, what are some of the things that you work with most times. You can actually add that. I can remove from these favorites. So this has been checked as favorite. So if I go to, let's say all resources, and I go to virtual machine, no, this is not what I want. This is not what I want. Yeah. So I can move this guy. I can remove it being um from being favorite. It will go out of here, but I don't want that. Then I can move. So you can customize what you see, you can customize the dashboard, and that's what that is talking about. We'll talk about ARM templates. Now, I'm sure we've talked about this during the fundamental class, where I explained that we have what we call Azure Resource Manager, and that's what is actually in charge of managing your resources, whatever resource you're deploying in Azure. So if you try to create any resource in Azure, you will see as at that time when you are deploying that resource, or when you are creating that deploy, you will get a notification, deployment in progress. So Azure manages resources via Azure Resource Manager. So this resource manager, instead of, there's something we call infrastructure as a code. That means you want to treat your infrastructure, you want to treat your resource just like a code, like an application code. So this is what the ARM template is all about. So these are some of the advantages of ARM template that I've talked about. When it comes to consistency, um, that's one of the things you get when it comes to using ARM template, or when it comes to deploying your infrastructure as a code. And it promotes what we call, reusability. You are able to reuse that same code to create that same resource at any point in time. It reduces manual or error prone, because should in case you have a task that needs to be repeated, like I said, if you have created a virtual machine like 6 months ago and you need to repeat the creation of that virtual machine, you want to create the same size, the same virtual machine, since you have, your infrastructure treated as a code, it's using ARM template reduces, errors that can come from creating something different. Now, when it comes to the deployment, it's easy because you can read, you can see what you are creating. So ARM templates gives you that how can I put it? It's declarative, let me put it that way. And it says that when you want to create a virtual machine, you also need some other um, resources to be created along that virtual machine. So you can create multiple resources at once. Like for you to be able to create a virtual machine, you need a storage, which is the hard disk. You need VNet. All these can actually, be created at the same time when you use, ARM template. So basically, I would say ARM template is a form of infrastructure as a code where you define your infrastructures that needs to be deployed using what we call, declarative syntax. What this means is you define your resources for Azure to deploy it without specifying, how the resource needs to be created. And that's what we call, declarative. So you do not need to specify how this resource needs to be created. Azure will figure it out and create it for you. So that you can see, express requirement tool code, it provides validation. Modular can be linked. Modular in the sense that, I talked about the fact that when you want to create a virtual machine, you need to create some other resources that will make up that virtual machine. When you want to create a virtual machine, you always need a virtual network. So you can have a module for network, and you can have a module for the machine itself. Then you can have a module for storage, which is the hard disk. Then you can link all this together. So that's what we call, modular. Like I've said, so ARM templates, ARM is in charge of managing those resources. We have our ARM template written in JSON, and we have what we call this JSON file is a collection of key value pairs. So when we talk about key value pairs, we are talking about, let's say we want to declare something, we say color. So for this color, Biola, thank you. I just saw this. Yes, JavaScript object notation. That's what the JSON stands for. Yes. So for this color, we can have yellow, blue, red. So here we have color, and the value, that's the key. Color is the value, and color is the key, then the value is going to be yellow or blue or red. So that's what they mean by key value pairs. And each key is actually a string. So when we talk about strings, strings are not numbers, strings are words. It can be combination of numbers and alphabet. It can be alphabet alone, So that's what we call, a string. Each value can be string. It can be number. So numbers, Boolean. Boolean means when we talk about Boolean expression, your value can be Boolean expression. It can be true or false. And that's what we call Boolean expression. It can be list of values, like I've actually explained using the color. So color can be, you can have a list of colors like yellow, blue, red, and the likes. So, and it could be object also. So this is what we call the schema. This is like what makes up the ARM template, where we have the parameter, the variables, the functions, resources, and the output. So this is where we declare the resource that we want to create under, the resource, which is where we specify which resource we want to create. So if you want to create a virtual machine, this is where we specify, the virtual machine. What the parameters does is, it provides values during deployment that allow, let's say, the same templates to be used in different environments. So if we have, let's say we want to deploy a virtual machine into our production environment, into our QA environment, and into our test environment, whatever you name your environment, maybe dev or the likes. So the parameter key is used to provide values during deployment to allow the same template to be used, in different environment. Yeah, okay.
No,
You
no,
wanted to, okay.
no.
So when we have the variable, these are values that can actually be reused within your template. So when we have variables, let's say we have name of resource, or let's say, no, name of resource cannot even be, yes, we can have something like location, which is the region where your resource is deployed. So you can reuse this variable, within the production environment, within, the staging environment, within the test environment. So they are reusable values, within your template. Then we have what we call the functions. Functions are, um, uh, how can I put this? These are used to simplify, whatever is going on in in your template. Something like, let's say I want to create a function, and what the function does is I want to make sure that when you are creating the name of your resource, the name of resource must be maybe the character of the name of your resource must be within 3 to 21. You cannot go out of 21 characters when it comes to the name, and you cannot have two character name, which will be assigned to your resource. So you can create a function to say all the users or all the resources that are being created, the name of this resource must have at least, 3 characters and at most 21 characters. So that's how, so we use function, to specify or customize, our resource, our template. Then the output, depending on the resource that we want to create. So it returns a value, based on the resource we are deploying. And so you do not need to count all those, but for now, just understand that whatever resource that you want to deploy is deployed, in within the resource, um, within the resource, uh, we call this block. Yeah, it's specified within the resource block. Bicep is just like our ARM template. Just like I will put it, it's just a mini version of ARM template. Here, it explains that a storage account needs to be created, and that's why you can see what resource do we want to create. So we have the storage account, and this is just like an endpoint. Let me just put it that way for now. Then you have the name of the storage account that we want to create. What location do we want to create the storage account? And if you want to actually tag your resource, you can put the tag here, which is also, a key value pair. You can see the display name is going to be the storage account name. And this is the kind of storage account that we want to create, which is storage v2, and SKU, which is the replication strategy. So here is locally redundancy, storage account. So if you want to do a locally redundancy, which you guys understand, so that's how the bicep works. So let's take a look at maybe a quick it's one of some of the templates that we can actually use within the Azure environment. If you have any question, I know um, we have a lot that we have been talking about here. Okay, so yeah, just the same way you can actually browse, your CLI code, your PowerShell code. That's the same way you can browse, your template, whatever you need to do, whatever resource you need to deploy. Let's say we want to work with this is Azure Resource Manager, uh, virtual machine. Let's say I want to deploy virtual machine. So you can see deploying. Okay, so let's search for the virtual machine. Yeah. Okay, I have virtual machine already. Virtual machine. So you can see if you want to deploy virtual machine with RDP ports, this is bicep, and it works with ARM template also. So you can see here, all you need to do is just to click on this deploy to Azure,